There are moments in life that don't just touch you, they split you open. They carve something permanent into your soul, and they change the entire trajectory of who you become. And sometimes that moment doesn't come with fireworks or applause. Sometimes it comes disguised as a simple knock on a door, a sound so ordinary that if you heard it on any other day, you'd ignore it. But on that day, in that house, during that season of life, that knock was the sound of destiny breaking through. I was just a kid 11 years old, the age where you should be worried about homework and bikes and scraped knees, not whether your family is going to have a Thanksgiving dinner, not whether your parents are going to make it through another argument, not whether you're going to have to step in and play the adult because the real adults are too broken, too tired, or too lost to be who you need them to be. We didn't have money, we didn't have food. And yeah, technically we wouldn't have starved, we had saltine crackers and a jar of peanut butter, but when every family around you is preparing a big Thanksgiving feast, when you can smell turkeys roasting through open windows, when kids at school talk about pumpkin pie and mashed potatoes, cousins visiting, and your family is sitting in a tiny house full of tension and silence and anger, you feel that emptiness, you feel that shame, you feel that longing for normalcy, for something stable, for something kind. And I remember the atmosphere in that house. The air was thick, heavy with the weight of words spoken in frustration and fear, words that once you release them, you can't pull them back. I remember my mom and dad fighting, not the kind of fight you bounce back from, but the kind that cuts, the kind where you can hear the hope draining out of their voices. And I'm standing there, this little kid, with a younger brother 5 years behind me and a little sister 7 years behind. So I became the shield, I became the buffer, I became the one trying to hold the pieces together, even though I barely understood what the pieces were. And then that knock, that simple, powerful, life-faltering knock on the door. At first I froze, not because I was scared, but because something inside me, that little spark of childlike faith, woke up. I ran to the door, I opened it, and standing there was this big man, big not just in size, but in presence. He had bags of groceries in both hands, and on the ground beside him was a huge pot with a full, uncooked turkey inside. To me, that turkey might as well have been a miracle. And he looked down at me with this calm, almost gentle seriousness, and he said, "Is your father here?" That moment hit me like a jolt. I knew something incredible was happening. For a kid who'd only known struggle, this felt like Christmas and my birthday and every miracle story I'd ever heard rolled into one. This wasn't just food, this was hope, this was relief, this was the argument stopper, the tension breaker. This was my chance to see my family smile again, even if only for a day. So with every ounce of excitement a little boy could possibly hold, I ran to my dad. "Dad, Dad, there's somebody at the door for you." But the house was still vibrating with the leftover energy of the fight. My dad was yelling at my mother through the door she'd shut on him. He didn't even look at me at first. He just snapped, "You answer it." And I said I did. "It's for you." He finally asked, "Who is it?" And in that pure, glowing, naive excitement, I said words that only a hopeful child could say, "I don't know, but they said they need to talk to you." I thought this was the moment everything would turn around, that he'd open the door, see the food, see the kindness from a stranger, and something would change, something would heal. But when my father opened that door, I saw something I did not expect. He didn't look relieved, he didn't look grateful, he looked angry, deep, burning, shame-filled anger. Before the man could get a word out, my father snapped, "We don't accept charity," and moved as if to slam the door shut. But the man had leaned forward a bit, not aggressively, just enough that the door bounced against his shoulder instead of closing. And when that happened, my father's anger surged. His face got red, the veins stood out, his jaw tightened. The man held up the bags just slightly, palms open, voice steady and calm. "Sir, I'm just the delivery guy. Somebody knows you're having a tough time. Everyone has a tough time. They just want you to have a great Thanksgiving with your family." But my father repeated the same words, louder, harsher. "We don't accept charity." He tried to slam the door again, but this time the man's foot was there, not pushing, not forcing, just present, and the door bounced open again. And that's when fear hit me, real fear, because I knew my father. I knew the look he got when anger clouded reason, and I was terrified he was going to hit this man. I was terrified everything was about to explode. But then something incredible happened. The man didn't get aggressive. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't challenge my father's pride with more pride. Instead, he softened. His eyes softened. His voice softened. Even his posture softened. He glanced at me, this skinny little 11-year-old kid caught in the storm, and in that soft, calm tone he said, "Sir, don't make your family suffer because of your ego." And those words, they hit my father like a punch he wasn't ready for. His face flushed red, the veins pulsed, his hands clenched. And then it happened. His shoulders dropped. Not like a man surrendering to another man, but like a man surrendering to the truth he couldn't outrun anymore. He grabbed the groceries, tossed them onto the floor inside the house with frustration and shame, slammed the door shut and never said thank you, didn't even pick up the turkey, and not long after that, he left our family for good. At the time, that felt like the worst thing that could ever happen. The kind of pain that sticks with you, the kind of confusion that eats at you, the kind of abandonment that makes a kid sit awake at night asking, why? What did I do wrong? Why wasn't I enough? And because I couldn't find an answer, I started obsessing. I started replaying those moments, the words, the facial expressions, the emotion. I tried to figure out what triggered what. I didn't fully understand it for a few years, but eventually I pieced it together. And what I realized didn't just explain my father, it explained people. It explained human behavior. It explained why we suffer and why we thrive. And now, today, I use that lesson every single day of my life. I teach it, I live it, and it's one of the most powerful understandings I could ever offer anyone watching or listening right now. Because what I learned is this: every moment of your life, you're making 3 decisions that shape everything you feel, everything you do, and ultimately the quality of your entire life. The first decision is, what are you going to focus on? You're doing it right now. You can focus on the words I'm saying. You can focus on how your body feels. You can focus on problems. You can focus on possibilities. There are millions of things happening around you and inside you at any moment, but you don't experience all of them. You only experience what you focus on. My father and I were in the same moment, same house, same circumstances, but we lived 2 different realities. Because we focused on 2 different meanings. I, as a child, focused on what we were about to receive: food, relief, hope. My dad focused on what he had failed to provide: his shame, his guilt, his fear of inadequacy. And what you focus on becomes your world. If you focus on what's missing, you'll feel empty. If you focus on what you can't control, you'll feel helpless. If you focus on what others have that you don't, you'll feel less than. That's why focus is destiny, but focus alone doesn't shape your life. It leads to the second decision: what does it mean? Because the moment you focus on something, your brain demands a meaning, and meaning is the generator of emotion. You can look at the rain and say, "This ruins my day," and feel miserable. Or you can look at the rain and say, "This nourishes the earth," and feel grateful. The rain didn't change, the meaning did. My dad focused on the groceries, but the meaning he gave them wasn't kindness or hope. The meaning he created was, I'm a failure, I can't feed my family, I'm worthless. And when someone chooses that meaning, the emotion that follows is inevitable and destructive, and that leads to the third decision: what are you going to do? Your actions are driven by the meaning you assign. If you feel powerless, you'll act powerless. If you feel angry, you'll lash out. If you feel hopeful, you'll try. If you feel grateful, you'll give. Those decisions, focus, meaning, action, are shaping your life every second, even if you're not aware of them. And in that house on that Thanksgiving, those decisions shaped a man's exit, a child's awakening, and eventually a life mission. From that day forward, I realized something profound. Life doesn't just happen to you, it happens for you. Every hardship, every painful memory, every disappointment carries a lesson that will either crush you or propel you. And that Thanksgiving, with that knock at the door, the anger in my father, and the courage of a stranger who refused to let pride destroy a family, became the lens through which I viewed the world. I began to see that moments of pain are really invitations to grow, to act, to choose. And the choices we make in those moments define everything. I started to understand that the world we experience is shaped far more by our internal landscape than by the external circumstances. I saw that my father was trapped in his own story, a story of shame and failure, and that his pride was a cage. Meanwhile, I, a child, was free in that same environment to create a different story, to focus on possibility, to notice hope where he only saw limitation. And that insight, it changed me forever. It set me on a path that would become my life's work. Because I realized early the moments that scare us, the moments that test our courage, are not obstacles. They are the raw material of mastery. They are the very ingredients of a meaningful life. The world will hand you struggle, it's inevitable. But what you do with struggle is what separates the ordinary from the extraordinary. I saw it firsthand in the simplest of ways. After that Thanksgiving, I watched how small acts of kindness had enormous power. That man who knocked on our door wasn't rich. He didn't have a title. He didn't have influence. But he had empathy. He had courage. And he had one simple philosophy: don't let pride stand in the way of a family's well-being. That act, so small to him, so monumental to me, planted a seed. And that seed grew into a lifetime of understanding about focus, meaning, and action. About how to use even the smallest resources, even the smallest act of courage to transform a life. It taught me that you do not need perfect circumstances to make a difference. You do not need recognition. You do not need wealth or power. All you need is the willingness to see what is broken, to refuse to let the brokenness dictate your response, and to act anyway. Fast forward years later, I found myself in positions I never dreamed possible. But the lessons of that moment remained. The first lesson, focus. Life will always pull you in countless directions. There is noise, distraction, obligation, chaos, but you have to choose what to see. If you focus on scarcity, fear, failure, resentment, you will live a life trapped in shadows. If you focus on opportunity, hope, gratitude, and purpose, you open the door to transformation, not just for yourself, but for everyone around you. The second lesson, meaning. You are the author of your experience. Every circumstance is neutral until you assign it significance. That day, my father's meaning led him to despair. The stranger's meaning led to courage. And I, as a child, had the privilege of assigning my own meaning: hope, excitement, a belief that the world could still be kind, even when the people closest to you fail you. Understanding that principle changed everything. And the third lesson, action. Meaning without action is wasted potential. If you see opportunity and do nothing, life passes you by. That stranger didn't just feel compassion, he acted, and his action rippled, not just in that moment, but across decades of my life. I realized then that every decision you make, every action taken, every choice made in alignment with your focus and meaning becomes a brick in the foundation of your life. Build wisely, build with courage, build with love. I applied these lessons not just in my personal life, but in the way I interacted with the world. I began to understand that influence is born of empathy, that true success is measured not by what you keep, but by what you give. And so I began a journey of service. It started small, helping friends, neighbors, strangers when I could, but I quickly realized the potential of scaling kindness. Not because I sought recognition, not because I sought approval, but because I had been shown the transformative power of giving when it mattered most, when there was nothing left, when pride could have destroyed hope, when action alone saved a family. I remember clearly the first time I realized that service could be expansive. I had been feeding people since I was 17, starting with just a few dollars, a few meals, a handful of sandwiches. And over time, I realized that those small acts weren't just changing lives. They were changing me. The biochemical effect of giving, of stepping outside of yourself to meet someone else's need, was profound. It rewired my brain, opened my heart, and created a feedback loop of purpose and joy. I learned that the most selfish act you can commit is truly giving, because giving fuels self-esteem, courage, and meaning. It became a mission, not a should, but a must. Not because I had wealth, not because I had power, but because I had been shown that one person acting with courage and empathy can ripple through time, that Thanksgiving knock at the door had planted a philosophy: serve relentlessly, focus deliberately, choose meaning courageously. And I carried that philosophy into every venture I pursued. I'll never forget the day I decided to scale this. I was writing a book, interviewing some of the most influential, powerful people in the world. And I realized something. There is an epidemic in humanity, not a lack of resources, but a lack of hearts willing to act when it matters most. Congress had cut food stamps by billions, families were losing access to meals, and the world was indifferent. And I thought, wait a minute, I have the tools to change this. I have the ability to scale action. So I made a decision. I said, what if I feed more people than I ever thought possible? What if I take everything I've learned about focus, meaning, and action and apply it to humanity's greatest need, hunger? And I realized that's when true purpose ignites. It's not about recognition, it's not about wealth, it's about impact. It's about doing what seems impossible, because the impossible is only impossible until someone chooses to act. In 8 years, with collaboration, coordination, and focus, we went from feeding millions to tens of millions to billions of meals, not for accolades, not for media attention, but because action aligned with focus and meaning creates unstoppable momentum. And in every story I've told, in every life I've touched, in every meal served, I see that 11-year-old boy at the door, heart pounding with hope, learning that one simple knock can alter destiny. It also taught me a profound truth about human potential. External circumstances matter less than internal mastery. You cannot control the world outside global economies, political decisions, natural disasters, other people's anger, poverty, wars. But you can control yourself. You can control what you focus on, the meaning you assign, and the actions you take. And when you do, when you master that triad, you step into a power that is far greater than any external situation. You step into freedom, you step into resilience, you step into mastery over your own life. I've seen it work across every arena, in personal lives, in business, in philanthropy, in relationships. Those who control their focus, who choose empowering meanings, and who act decisively create their own luck, their own success, their own joy. Those who allow life to dictate focus, meaning, and action live in chaos, fear, and limitation. And this is why so many people are stuck, not because the world is unfair, but because they never realized they were the author of their experience. And that's the lesson I carry everywhere. You do not have to wait for perfect circumstances. You do not have to wait for permission. You do not have to wait for recognition. You do not have to wait for someone else to knock at your door. You can knock at the doors of possibility yourself. You can feed the hungry. You can inspire the hopeless. You can repair broken families, broken communities, broken hearts. You can scale kindness and courage beyond what seems imaginable. It begins with a decision. What will you focus on today? What meaning will you assign to the moments in your life? And what action will you take that moves the needle, that matters, that leaves the world a little better than it was yesterday? Because the world doesn't remember the passive, the indifferent, or the fearful. It remembers the brave. It remembers those who acted when the choice was hard, those who chose hope when despair was louder, those who gave when it hurt, when they had nothing, when pride screamed to hold back. Those are the people who change history. Those are the people whose lives inspire generations. Those are the people who turn ordinary days into extraordinary legacies. And all of it, everything can begin with one moment. One choice, one knock. One act of courage that refuses to let ego, fear, or pride dictate what matters most. That is how destinies are rewritten. That is how children learn hope. That is how families are saved. That is how lives are transformed.